Have you ever wondered if there's like a secret recipe for digital disruption? A repeatable formula that startups use to take on giants? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on a really powerful framework, one that's taught on the very first day of an MBA class at Harvard Business School. It's a whole new way of seeing the world, so let's dive in and see how it works. So, what is the secret? I mean, how do they really pull it off? It can feel like some kind of magic trick, right? But the truth is, this kind of disruption isn't just luck or some random stroke of genius. It can actually be engineered. There's a predictable pattern at play, and once you learn to see it, I promise, you're going to start noticing it everywhere. Okay, so here's our game plan. We'll start by looking at that pattern, then we'll break down the core framework called the customer value chain. After that, we'll get into the key strategy of decoupling, lay out a 5-step recipe you can actually use, and finally, look at how you can start applying this lens to the world around you. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, a pattern of disruption. And the subtitle here says it all. It's not luck, it's a playbook. To really get what this playbook is all about, we need to ground it in a story that, well, most of us have lived through. Let's rewind the clock, back to the world before Uber. Remember what that was like? You're standing on a street corner, arm waving in the air, just hoping a cab drives by. It was total uncertainty. Now here's the thing. Uber didn't invent cars or drivers. What they did was pure genius. They looked at that whole process and they zeroed in on the single most broken part, that frustrating, anxiety-filled moment of just trying to find a ride, and they fixed it. They gave us peace of mind with a simple app. And this is the light bulb moment. Uber's move, it wasn't some one-off stroke of brilliance. It's an example of a playbook that gets used over and over again by disruptive companies, whether it's Airbnb or even the early days of Facebook. The secret to this whole pattern lies in one single, foundational business concept. And that brings us right to Section 2, the customer value chain. This is the core framework, the secret lens that disruptors use to see the world. I know it might sound a bit academic, but it's a surprisingly simple and really powerful way to see any business through your customer's eyes. So what exactly is the customer value chain? Well, at its heart, it's just the series of steps a customer has to go through to get something done. Think of it like a to-do list for the customer. If you want to open a bank account, what do? You research banks, you travel to a branch, you fill out a bunch of forms, you find your documents. All those steps make up the value chain for that service. And guess what? Every single product has one. Now, not all the steps in this chain are created equal. They basically fall into 3 buckets. First step, you've got the value-creating activities. This is the good stuff. It's the core benefit, the reason you even started this journey in the first place, like finally watching the movie you wanted to see or eating that delicious meal. But to get to that good part, we usually have to put up with the value-eroding steps. Oh, you know exactly what these are. They're the frustrating but necessary evils. Waiting in line, filling out paperwork, sitting on hold, it's all the friction that just wears you down. And the last piece of the puzzle is value capturing. This one's super simple. It's the moment you pay. It's when you swipe your card or hit that confirm purchase button, the point where the company gets its money. So, to recap, creating, eroding, and capturing. Got it? Cool. Okay, so we have our chain, we understand the parts, but here's where it gets really, really interesting. See, established companies, they want to keep that chain all linked together, but disruptors, they want to find the weakest link and smash it. This brings us to Section 3, the art of decoupling. Decoupling is the act of unbundling these activities. A new company, usually a digital startup, comes in and just breaks the chain. Let's go back to Uber. They decoupled the matchmaking, the finding a ride, from the rest of the taxi experience. They didn't try to replace the whole taxi industry at first. No way. They just stole that one single activity and focused on doing it 10 times better than anyone else. And this is so powerful because you can decouple any part of the chain. Let's take the video game industry, for example. Twitch came along and decoupled a value-creating activity. They realized that just watching great gamers play is its own awesome experience. Then you have Steam, which decoupled a value-eroding step. They completely got rid of that annoying trip to the store. And of course, Fortnite, they famously decoupled value capturing, separating the act of playing from paying, and pretty much changed gaming forever with the free-to-play model. So, we've got the theory down. We know what decoupling is. But how do you actually do it? Well, that's what Section 4 is all about, the 5-step disruption recipe. This is where we go from theory to a real actionable playbook. The recipe is surprisingly straightforward. First, you basically become a detective. You map out the customer's entire journey, step by step. Next, you classify those steps, which ones are creating value and which ones are just causing pain. Then comes the most critical move. You identify the single weakest link in that whole chain. From there, your mission is to break it at that exact point. And finally, you have to play chess and think ahead, anticipate how the big guys are going to react. Let's see this in action with a brilliant example, a company called Pillpack. Step 3 is the absolute key here, identifying that weak link. You're hunting for the moment in the process where customers are the most unsatisfied, the most frustrated. That moment of maximum pain, that's not a problem, that is your biggest opportunity. Pillpack saw that for elderly patients on a bunch of different medications, the single biggest pain point wasn't getting the prescription or even going to the pharmacy. Nope. The weak link was the confusing, stressful, and value-eroding activity of organizing all those different pills at home. So they broke the chain right there. They created a service that did the organizing for the customer, delivering pre-sorted packets for each day. It was so insanely effective that Amazon swooped in and bought them for over $1 billion. Okay, so a startup comes in, they successfully break the chain. What happens next? Well, that brings us to section 5, life after decoupling. Because the story doesn't end with the disruption. In a lot of ways, it's really just getting started. Well, a funny thing often happens. After a startup wins by unbundling and decoupling one activity, their very next move is often to start bundling again. It's a strategy called recoupling. Uber is the perfect example. They started by decoupling rides, and once they owned that customer relationship, they recoupled food delivery with Uber Eats, then groceries, and on and on. They expand outwards from their starting point. But here's a really important reality check. As Professor Teixeira himself warns, just because you brilliantly disrupt an industry and create tons of value for customers, that is no guarantee you'll actually make any money. Building a profitable business model on top of that disruption, that's a whole separate challenge. So remember, disruption and profit are two very different things. All right, let's bring this all home with our final section, your turn to disrupt. Because the real power of this framework isn't just understanding how other companies did it in the past. It's about giving you a new lens to see the world and spot opportunities hiding in plain sight. So where do you start looking for these weak links? Hunt for the friction. Where are people paying too much, waiting too long, or just working way too hard? Those are the cracks in the armor. And in today's world, new technologies like AI are the perfect weapons to attack these weak links, to make things radically cheaper, faster, and easier for customers. Now, if this is all new to you, here's some great practical advice. Before you try to invent the next big thing, just practice. Apply this framework to a business or an industry you already know really well. Map out its value chain, classify the activities, and find the weak links. It's the best way to build up your analytical muscle. And that brings us to our final thought. As you go about your week, just look at the services you use and the tasks you do, from banking to ordering groceries. Start thinking like a decoupler. What frustrating, time-consuming, or expensive weak link in your own life is just waiting for you or someone else to come along and break the chain?